TypeScript syntax. In the previous lesson, we created a properly organized TypeScript project. In this lesson, we will learn the basic syntax of TypeScript. Syntax means the rules that determine how code must be written. Just as a spoken language has rules for arranging words and sentences, a programming language has rules for arranging keywords, names, values, symbols, and statements. If we follow the syntax rules, the TypeScript compiler can understand our program. If we break those rules, the compiler reports an error. We will learn about statements, keywords, identifiers, punctuation symbols, semicolons, case sensitivity, whitespace, comments, and code blocks. We will also examine some common syntax errors and learn how to identify them. Let us get started. We will continue using the TypeScript project created in the previous lesson. Open the TypeScript-project folder in Visual Studio Code. Inside the src folder, create a new file named demo.ts. Open the demo.ts file. Let us begin with a simple TypeScript statement. Enter the statement shown on the screen. This single line contains several parts of TypeScript syntax. It contains a keyword. It contains an identifier. It contains a type annotation. It contains an assignment operator. It contains a value. It also ends with a semicolon. Let us examine each part. The first part is the word let. Let is a TypeScript keyword. A keyword is a word that has a special meaning in the programming language. In this statement, let tells TypeScript that we are declaring a variable. We will study variables and constants in detail in the next lesson. For now, notice that keywords are part of the language syntax and must be written correctly. The next part is item name. Item name is an identifier. An identifier is a name that we give to something in our program. For example, we use identifiers to name variables, functions, classes, and other program elements. Here, item name is the name of the variable. The colon followed by the word string is a type annotation. It tells TypeScript that the variable should contain a string value. We have already used type annotations in our earlier programs. We will study type annotations in detail in a later lesson. The equal sign is the assignment operator. It assigns the value on its right side to the variable on its left side. Notebook is the value assigned to the variable. Because notebook is text, it is written inside quotation marks. The quotation marks show where the text begins and ends. The final symbol is the semicolon. The semicolon marks the end of the statement. A statement is an instruction that performs an action. In this example, the statement creates a variable and assigns a value to it. A TypeScript program usually contains many statements. Add another statement below the first one. The first statement creates a variable named item name. The second statement creates a variable named item price. Each statement is written on its own line. Writing one statement per line makes the program easier to read. Now add two console log statements. The console.log statements display information in the terminal. Let us examine the punctuation used in a console log statement. The dot connects console to log. It tells TypeScript that we want to access log from console. The opening and closing parentheses contain the values that we pass to console log. The comma separates the two values inside the parentheses. The semicolon ends the statement. Symbols such as dots, commas, colons, parentheses, braces, brackets, and semicolons are important parts of TypeScript syntax. Each symbol has a specific purpose. We will use all these symbols throughout the course. You do not need to memorize every use immediately. The purpose of this lesson is to help you recognize the basic structure of TypeScript code. Now let us discuss semicolons. In many situations, TypeScript allows a statement to work even when the semicolon is omitted. For example, the following code can usually compile successfully. TypeScript and JavaScript can automatically determine the end of many statements. This behavior is related to automatic semicolon insertion. However, relying on automatic semicolon insertion can sometimes make code less clear. For this course, we will write semicolons at the end of statements. Using semicolons consistently makes the end of each statement easy to identify. It also helps us maintain a clear and predictable coding style. Next, let us discuss case sensitivity. TypeScript is case sensitive. This means uppercase and lowercase letters are treated as different characters. For example, item name with an uppercase N is different from item name written entirely in lowercase. In the first console log statement, the identifier matches the variable name exactly. In the second console log statement, the uppercase N has been changed to a lowercase n. TypeScript treats this as a different identifier. Because no variable name item name with a lowercase n exists, the compiler reports an error. Keywords are also case sensitive. The TypeScript keyword is let with lowercase letters. Writing let with an uppercase L does not create the same keyword. Always pay attention to capitalization when writing TypeScript code. Now let us look more closely at identifiers. An identifier can contain letters, digits, underscores, and dollar signs. However, an identifier cannot begin with a digit. It also cannot contain spaces or hyphens. A reserved TypeScript keyword cannot normally be used as an identifier. TypeScript developers commonly use camel case for variable names. In camel case, the first word begins with a lowercase letter. Each additional word begins with an uppercase letter. Next, let us discuss whitespace. Whitespace includes spaces, blank lines, and indentation. TypeScript usually ignores extra whitespace between many parts of a statement. For example, both statements shown on the screen have the same meaning. Although extra spaces may not change the meaning, too much spacing makes the code difficult to read. We should use consistent spacing. Blank lines can also improve readability. In our program, we can use a blank line to separate variable declarations from the console log statements. The blank line does not change how the program works. It simply separates related sections of code. Indentation is also important for readability. Indentation means adding spaces at the beginning of a line to show that the line belongs inside a code block. Let us look at a simple code block. The opening curly brace starts the block. The closing curly brace ends the block. The statements inside the braces are indented. The indentation makes it easier to see that the statements belong to the block. Curly braces are used with many TypeScript features, including conditions, loops, functions, classes, and objects. TypeScript does not require a specific number of spaces for indentation. A common style is to use 2 spaces or 4 spaces. Visual Studio Code can handle indentation automatically. The important point is to use one style consistently. Next, let us learn about comments. Comments are notes written inside the source code. They help us explain the purpose of the code. The TypeScript compiler ignores comments when it processes the program. There are 2 common types of comments. The first is a single line comment. A single line comment begins with 2 forward slashes. Everything after the 2 forward slashes on that line is treated as a comment. The comment explains what the next statement does. We can also place a short comment after a statement. Use end-of-line comments carefully. Long comments placed after code can make the line difficult to read. The second type is a multi-line comment. A multi-line comment begins with a forward slash followed by an asterisk. It ends with an asterisk followed by a forward slash. A multi-line comment can extend across several lines. Comments should explain useful information. We do not need to add a comment that simply repeats what the code already makes obvious. At this stage, simple comments are fine while learning. As your programs become larger, write comments that explain the reason behind a section of code rather than describing every symbol. Now let us update the demo.ts file with a complete example. Replace its content with the program shown on the screen. Let us review the program. The multi-line comment describes the example. The first statement declares item name and assigns the string value notebook. The second statement declares item price and assigns the number value 120. A single line comment explains the purpose of the console log statements. The console log statements display the item information. Each statement ends with a semicolon. The program also uses consistent spacing and blank lines. Save the demo.ts file. Now compile the project. Open the terminal and run the TypeScript compiler command. The compiler reads the tsconfig.json file. Now run the generated JavaScript file. The terminal should display the following output. Now let us intentionally create a few syntax errors. Understanding errors is an important part of learning a programming language. First, remove the closing quotation mark after notebook. The string begins with a quotation mark, but it does not have a matching closing quotation mark. Visual Studio Code should underline the code and indicate a problem. When we run the compiler, TypeScript reports a syntax error because the string is not correctly terminated. The exact error message may vary depending on the TypeScript version. However, it will point to the area where the compiler could not understand the syntax. Restore the closing quotation mark before continuing. The opening and closing quotation marks must match. A string can use double quotation marks or single quotation marks. Do not begin a string with one quotation style and incorrectly end it with another. We will learn more about strings in a later lesson. The next common error is a missing closing parenthesis. The console log call begins with an opening parenthesis. It must also have a closing parenthesis. Without it, the compiler cannot correctly understand where the console log call ends. Before finishing, let us review the main syntax rules covered in this lesson. TypeScript programs are made of statements. Keywords are reserved words with special meanings. Identifiers are names used for variables and other program elements. Identifiers are case sensitive. An identifier cannot begin with a digit. Semicolons mark the end of statements. Whitespace usually does not change how a statement works, but consistent spacing, blank lines, and indentation make code easier to read. Curly braces group statements into code blocks. Comments allow us to add notes that are ignored by the compiler. In the next lesson, we will learn about variables and constants in TypeScript. Thank you for watching. If you found this video helpful, please like the video and subscribe to our channel for more TypeScript tutorials.